Welcome to the Music Lounge. We're back with another fun, educational, interesting episode for you. Offline, we talk about careers a lot. We talk about our path to MTV, beyond MTV, and the struggles of maintaining a career in this crazy industry, transitioning to other industries, what skills we learn, and all that fun stuff. Today's episode, we're just going to chat about how we got to MTV, life after MTV, and maybe offer a little bit of insight into what we're doing. And please comment below if you have suggestions on what we could be doing better in our career paths. But, we're all in our own lane. Susan, Perry, how are you doing?
I was going to introduce, so we've got Susan Natoli back with us today. So thank you for joining us, Susan. We appreciate it.
Love being here as always.
And before we jump into everything, just wanted to remind people to like, share, review, and rate the podcast wherever you watch or listen so that we can hopefully reach more listeners and viewers and help build the word around the podcast. So thank you for doing that. Yes. Yeah. Or, share it with a friend and get people to listen and watch.
Yeah. For someone that shares where I can see it, I will offer to leave a birthday voice message to anyone they choose. How's that? That's worth a share, isn't it?
That is worth a share. Absolutely. And I don't know
optional.
I don't know if we should mention this, but one of our hosts today is actually going to be celebrating a birthday the day after we tape this. So you may want to wish Susan Natoli a happy birthday.
Guys, it feels like I just turned 23. It feels like I just moved to New York to work at MTV. I don't know where the last 29, 30 years went.
I thought you were going to say the last 15 years.
I know. I got to own it. I have
That's
to own it.
That's how we look and feel, yeah. But, all of our guests, we like to see how they got their journey and their, start in the industry. So maybe we'll give a quick round on how we, we've pretty much chimed in and talked about our career paths. But Susan, how did you get to be my co-worker in MTV programming in 2000?
So I was a television and radio major in college. Now, this was before internet. I think internet existed, but and people didn't really have email, or if you did, like if you sent an email, it took like 3 days to reach the person. There was no social media, it was a amazing time. It was a glorious time where people talked in person, and it was.
And television and radio were the main formats. That was it.
And music, was revered and celebrated and loved, and the height of grunge. But I worked in radio. I worked in local radio at my college radio station. And I really didn't know what I wanted to do after I graduated. But I watched MTV, and, it was singled out. It was Beavis and Butthead. And Jenny McCarthy is just, let's give it up for whoever the contestant was on Singled Out. And I'm like, well, if this idiot can do it. But I wanted to marry a rock star.
Yeah.
So, I should be, married to Dave Navarro now, like going on tour with him.
Were you seeing yourself as a contestant on Singled Out, and this was your way? If you worked for MTV, you thought you could be on TV?
I didn't know. Well, I thought that if I worked at MTV, I would meet all these rock stars. And I thought that I would be able to marry a rock star, that they would meet me and they would find me like irresistible. I didn't know that I had to work in the LA office for like that perk. This is an inside joke for people that don't know. There were some girls in the LA office that married like legit rock stars. But I interned at MTV, and I just really put in a lot of effort and made people aware that like my internship was up and I was available to PA. And then I became a PA at VH1. They had an in-house temp pool. That's how big this company was. That's how many departments and how many employees were there, that they needed an in-house temp pool for when people, especially executive assistants, would go away on vacation for a week or so, they had, somebody had to fill in and take over for them, which was, booking meetings, picking up phones, answering phones. And
Right. If you knew the basics, you could work in any department.
Exactly.
yeah, you can problem solve.
Yeah.
You could get shit done. That was what you had to prove, which is astounding that people these days can't even do that for themselves. But anyway, so I was in the temp pool and I temped around all over. And then for MTV programming, the new head of programming came in and he needs an executive assistant. And I literally walked into his office and was like, my name is Susan. I've been here for a year, temping, interning, or whatever the hell I said. I said, I know everyone. So when you're ready, here's my extension. And then he's like, you have some attitude lately. And then I think it was 3 hours later, he's like, when can you start? And that's how I came to the programming department and worked under Paul, the Benedettis.
And I guess, having the foundation of being an executive assistant allowed you to kind of grasp the foundation of programming. And, if you're EA to Paul, and I was as well, after you, I took the reins. He was a great boss because he let you in and he wanted to teach you because it made his life easier. A good boss should really help you grow within that department, not just keep you as an assistant and that's it. So,
and
great boss.
Everything was at the speed of culture. Literally, MTV moved fast, just like any a newsroom would, responding to topics that are happening as of the minute. So just temping and knowing who was the head of sales, who was the head of marketing, just knowing who he needed to reach when he needed a quick answer.
Yeah.
Is what I think that's what really was I need you to start right away. So and you do, and then working in programming is like the headquarters. So you do work with every single department. Mm-hmm.
So when you left programming, you went into integrated marketing. What experience did you have or skill set did you build up to be able to feel confident on going to integrated marketing?
MTV was the first media company to instill integrated marketing into their business model. So back in the day, before a technology such as TiVo existed, people had to watch TV live. If you risked going to the bathroom or grabbing a snack during a commercial break, you could miss the first part of a segment back into a show, and you were never going to see it again.
Yeah.
YouTube didn't exist. Once it was aired, it was aired. So we have advertisers were calling up our ad sales team. They wanted their spots on the air. They wanted them whatever day part it was, prime, afternoon drive, whatever. And they were paying a premium. And then as people started to record their shows and were watching it when it was fit into their own schedule, then the advertisers started calling up ad sales and saying wait a minute, how do we know we're getting eyeballs? People aren't watching live,
Well, it's also because at that time too, you were able to fast forward through the ads when they came up on a DVR or TiVo.
Yes. Yeah. Yep. So ad sales came to programming and said, look, we have this problem. What can we do? And Paul and I and Robin and Civic and G-Rock, we worked on all of the different offerings. For MTV2, we actually we didn't have our own upfront because it wasn't like MTV. MTV had these huge upfronts where they would sell a year upfront. But I remember working on a MTV upfront document, MTV2 upfront document, and we broke it up into quarters, Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4, and then we sold opportunities. I'm trying to think what we would have for MTV2, Spankin' New Music Week. I think that was across all the networks. But, we would find whatever the anchor was, and then we would, depending on if ad sales need a little more to sell, maybe we would do we can do a Wild and Out weekend, and we can repackage some Wild and Outs. For different themed days. Hit My Rides, we were doing a lot of that. And we were doing a lot of video music video programming and VJ hosts.
Mm-hmm.
And we'd say, we'd say like, they're going to get the in-show billboard, like, this brought to you by Pepsi, or, a tag tune in, or VJ call out. And then Paul also spearheaded co-branded programming. So we had Nike sponsored Battlegrounds, which was a basketball competition, Nokia and AT&T, and there was another telemobile company were sponsoring the Nokia Live concerts, where we would actually produce that in conjunction with the brand. And that's how branded programming started. So I enjoyed doing that because it was kind of like putting these opportunities together, kind of creating like a specialized destination.
Yeah.
That was themed and that we could sell. And then, to be quite honest with you, I found out that the ad salespeople made commission. And I didn't know that they made commission. I just didn't know. I just thought they had a bigger salary. And when I found out how much money they made, I was like, I can make more than what my salary is. I mean, integrated marketing, you don't. You make your year-end bonus based on the whatever. But I was just like, holy crap. Like, I was like, how many more concerts can I go to? How many more times can I go to like TRL and meet Pamela Anderson? Like, I got to start making some bank here. And that's how I I moved into integrated marketing. And Tim Rossa, who you just had on as a guest, he when he left MTV, he moved to LA and he headed up integrated marketing at Entertainment Television. And they brought me on as a consultant because they had so much library content that wasn't being monetized. And I created programming destinations for them and some other ideas. And then I just jumped right in. I started answering RFPs, and that's how I made that lateral transition.
Did you leave at your own accord, MTV, or were you part of
I wasn't part of a layoff, but everybody that I touched was affected by the huge layoffs that happened on Valentine's Day in 2007, including, our boss, Paul. But MTV2 especially, they cut development, they cut production, like Lou Stellato's team, Carol Ng's team. It was just me and Sully, I think, doing on-air promos. And MTV2 was, our demographic was teen boys, where MTV was young, teen females. And I was like, well, if I don't have a production and development department, what am I gonna air? So I was like looking for another job, and John Lack, who created MTV, and he's the one who says, "Ladies and gentlemen, rock and roll" in the first hour of MTV.
Oh, wow.
He was the CEO of a up and coming network that kind of used the same model as MTV did, but instead of music videos, it was like brand creative. And they kind of poached me, and it paid me a little more, but at the time I was like, oh my gosh, like, I'm rich, which I wasn't. But I really thought like that my job was going to be next. I thought like they were going to, take MTV2 off the air, because, there was nobody that was really dedicated to it now besides two people. And so I left. Do I regret it? No, it was a different, it was a different place. And once Paul had left, and not that, everybody, I still loved everybody else in the department and everything, but like all of MTV2 was gone. And it was just like, I thought, okay, it's just a matter of time. And then that's the rest is history. I was still programming for John Lack's channel, but that was a startup and it didn't last long. And then I transitioned into integrated marketing, which seemed, like such a stable option, because, I mean, do you remember like 10 years ago, all the integrated marketing jobs you'd see on Synopsis?
Yeah.
Gone. All gone.
But it's interesting. There was a different time as well where you possibly could transition to another field based on relationships and experience. Now it's almost like you can't get through the AI bot if you can do it. You can do certain jobs, but it's a little more strict, I guess, or I don't know.
But the jobs that we did don't exist. Very few and far between. And we can talk about that a little later in this episode.
So my career started as an assistant at a talent agency. I was at a company called Triad, which was a smaller film, TV, and theater agency. I started working as an assistant to an agent. Then I moved to another agent's desk in that office. Triad was bought by William Morris. The agent I worked for moved to the William Morris office, so I was there for another year. I had a friend leave working as an assistant at Triad and went to VH1 in production. He knew that the two directors of production were looking for an assistant. So I went in and met with them and got hired for that job. And then I was there for a couple of years. I left to go to a startup called FX when it launched. Most people will not know that it was a building on 26th Street and Broadway across the street from Madison Square Park. Every show was done in that building.
Wow.
Because the whole channel was live. So everything that aired was just like day parted out, and we would air everything live from that building. I only stayed there a couple of months. I went back to VH1 into a newly formed talent and creative development department. So I was booking celebrity talent for the channel, left there and went to work on the Ricky Lake show as the talent executive there. And that was a very tough job because very few people wanted to go on Ricky Lake to promote their stuff because she was not known as being super talent friendly for her audience, especially. But we did have two of the first ever performances on television in the US by Britney Spears and NSYNC. Yes. So I got an early taste of them. They were not big at all. They were just really breaking in the US. Then I was freelancing and a position opened up at MTV Radio and MTV.com. It was called, it was MTV Online at the time. A woman there was going on maternity leave. She was going to be gone for 3 months. They needed somebody to fill in. Robin Reinhart told me about the job, referred me to them. One of those things where you go in and meet and they're like, okay, we'll hire you. Like that doesn't happen anymore these days. Like you go through 5 interviews, you go through, you've got to apply, you've got to talk to this person, that person. Long story short, the woman never came back. I took her job and was there for, almost 9 years. And then just kind of grew from there, went to MTV.com, became its own thing. Then MTV.com talent department was moved into the MTV talent department, and that's how I ended up there.
Interesting.
So, yeah. And I mean, I loved it. It was great because at MTV.com, we had very little oversight. Like the people who were doing the content for the site were mostly focused on promoting the shows, and the channel talent department was like, yeah, it's online. We don't care about that at that time. So we got to do kind of anything and everything we wanted. We just were like, okay, what fun idea can we come up with? I never knew if I had a budget for it or whatnot, but we just did it and somehow it got paid. And, we were able to create all this amazing stuff. I mean, we did this, speaking of the Nokia series, we had an MTV.com live series. And I mean, I had Green Day, I had Kelly Clarkson, I had Kanye West, every up and coming indie band at the time did it. We were in a tiny little studio on 24th Street, 4 cameras. And I mean, literally just the band playing. I mean, it was amazing to be in that environment with these artists doing this. It was Andrew, what's your story at MTV?
So I got to MTV through a friend that was a editor at Teen People magazine. And I was started in LA working at Fred Siegel. I met a music manager who was also a cashier and told me about an internship at Bill Graham Management. Bill Graham Management used to get some emails about jobs opening up, and they knew it was an internship. And so literally, I think I was there for a week. and there was a front desk office assistant for Mitch Snyder organization, which was a big indie PR firm in LA. They had the Warped Tour, Coachella, Backstreet Boys, Anne and Nancy Wilson Hart, like David Bowie, Sandra Bernhard. So they had some massive clients in the late 90s, early 2000s. So I didn't even know what PR was at the time, really. So I got to learn that, and I got to kind of build my way up within a year and a half. And I was almost going to be a tour publicist when I got an opportunity to work for this indie online record label that was co-owned by Kevin Lyman, who was the founder of the Vans Warped Tour. This was a side project of his, and it was so early for online record label and music. I think the founder just, I don't know what he did with the funding, but not Kevin, the other guy that kind of put up the money. So that didn't last. Kevin was like, why don't you just come on the Warped Tour? You know, we have some CD samplers and skateboards from the bands that we were signing. You can just have a booth and give them away and do some raffles or whatever. So I spent the summer of 2000 on the Warped Tour. Whilst I was on the Warped Tour, I was speaking to my friend at Team People, and she told me about an assistant job at MTV, corporate communications. It was MTV Networks, and this was in LA. Interviewed for that. I think I had my first interview 2 days after I got back from the Warped Tour. I ended up getting that job, and it was, you know, like how we said programming was the epicenter of the company. I felt like corporate communications also was, because we were early on, you know, news, internal news, launching it, you know, announcements, the first to like screen shows because we had to write press releases. So we worked hand in hand with programming, and, you know, this was working for MTV2, VH1, TV Land, Nickelodeon. So I did the red carpets for all of the award shows for all of the networks for almost 2 years, which was really cool. And the department was next to the programming team, and on the other side was the music team. So I got to be really close with some of the music people like Gina and Lorna in programming, who was Brian Graydon's assistant, who we know. So I think it was Lorna, and I was talking about my career growth and what I really liked about the company. And they were like, oh, well, you might want to move to New York if you want to work in programming. And there wasn't anything in the music team, but this guy, head of programming in New York, Paul de Benedettis, was looking for a new assistant because his current assistant got promoted, I guess, which was Susan. So Lorna really held my hand through this interview process. I remember having the Zoom, you know, internal video interviews with Paul. I went out to New York to have a final interview face to face, and I got that job, which was incredible. And I felt like the foundations that I learned from kind of corporate communications and programming really set my, you know, skills that I use today. You know, music being a big passion for me, I was always having my ear to the ground in New York about, you know, potential openings in the music team. Not that I didn't want to continue working for Paul, but you know, an opportunity came up after they laid off literally half the music team, and then I ended up getting a manager role working for a past guest, Amelia Gray, and basically we were overseeing MTV Hits and doing a lot of the ancillary, you know, program planning for all of the other music channels around how do we support the VMAs, or how do we support this theme week. So I would be really involved in coming up with those stunts, and then working with record labels on building their campaigns, which was really fun. So, you know, I was at MTV for 12 years. I felt like I was at the top of my game, rose to senior director, and then music just took a shift, right? My job was getting smaller and smaller, and it ended up where I was only programming VH1, and I would do the whole week's programming by Monday before lunch. I would have the whole week programmed. So the rest of the week, I would literally have nothing to do. And I felt like, is this a sign that I'm next to get fired or my job isn't valuable anymore? So I had an opportunity to join a startup to be head of music programming and kind of content strategy for this new online music platform, which was supposed to be like the music video version of Pandora. So I went and did that till they didn't raise any more money. And then I feel like I've been on the consulting train for a while, bouncing around startups.
So one of the things I want to get back to, though, is that you said, and I said it also, was that, I mean, up until I went to Vivo, I never applied for a job. I mean, I interviewed for jobs, but it was always because somebody else said, there is a job available. You should talk to these people if you're interested.
Yeah.
And it just doesn't feel like that happens very much today anymore.
It's a good point. Yeah. I mean, how many jobs have you found that you know someone that you consider yourself good friends, or you have a good colleague working past relationship that, you know, you would do for them what you hope they would do for you, and you don't even get a response or anything? I mean, what do you think about that? Has that happened to you
It
in
has
the past
absolutely
few
happened
years?
to me. I mean, there's people who, without naming names, there's people who were both my intern and assistant who are at a large social media company now and would not even return my emails.
Yeah.
So, talk about frustrating. And this is, I probably shouldn't be saying this, so maybe tomorrow, Andrew, I'll ask you to cut this out of the show. For me, there was folks who were working at smaller labels. We knew at MTV that there were certain things we had to do, whatever was in big rotation at MTV or whatever was being supported by MTV2 or MTVU, we had to do stuff with. But there was a lot of artists who just were lost in the wilderness and their videos just weren't going anywhere. And I would talk to these labels. I'd be like, well, we can do stuff on MTV.com. I can give it this, I can give it that. We can playlist it. We can do this, we can do that. And, some of those people now are at, again, streaming companies. And, I don't expect somebody to give me a job just because I played their video 15 years ago, but at least consider me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because I feel like I really stepped up and stepped out for you, and it would be nice to sort of have that reciprocated back to you.
I was going to say, you were doing it. Yes, you wouldn't support an artist if they were absolutely, excuse my French, dog shit. But if they were passable for you to air, then you would look at the other side, which was maintaining the relationship and building that rapport with that person.
Exactly. I mean, there was, a couple of rock labels, and MTV sort of, I mean, we did have the rock show, and there were some videos played on MTV, MTV2, but it just, they weren't hard rock, they weren't metal, so they didn't fit into categories, if that makes sense. And they just were not getting the exposure in the MTV universe. And I was like, let us do stuff with it. We'll do stuff with it. And we even did stuff with the artists themselves. We'd bring them in, we'd do photo shoots, we do interviews. We gave them a platform when no one else would. And it is frustrating to me, as I said, that these are people who will get back to me in email and say, yes, I'll put in a good word for you, or yes, I'll pass this thing along. But nothing ever happens. And, I get it. I get we're in a completely different time. I get that, a lot of this stuff happened a long time ago. But at the same time, it feels like, maybe you're only in your position because I did you a solid when I was at the place that you wanted your artist to be featured. And I, took a step out and helped you. And that helped you at your company. You were like, hey, look, MTV's doing this for this artist. And that gave you a way to get to your next step and your next step and your next step. And I just don't think people think that way anymore. So
yeah, 100% agreed, man. It's, if you don't have anything to offer, then you're kind of irrelevant.
I think some people too, I don't know the specific situation, but I think maybe there are some people that have never been out of work and they don't understand. like how difficult it is, what a mental toll it is, just how you feel about yourself when you're not working and not having that support of going into a job that does for you socially and mentally and like economically, of course. And it is a different time. It's weird. It's weird. I mean, there were some jobs last year at iHeartRadio that I was great for partnerships. And I was John Sykes' assistant for a little bit. He runs iHeartRadio. And I've sent him my resume for a position at iHeart that's well below him, but like, and he's responded, he's like, got it. Like, and trusting that that person would send it to whoever the hiring manager is. Here's the CEO, and still never receiving a response, not even the request. Like, don't even, like, at least interview me. You don't have to hire me, but talk to me. So it's weird. And back in the day, it seemed like, our cups were overfilled and we were happy to pass the cup around. And I think people are scared now, which could be part of it. Who knows? Like, that person could be doing the job of 5 different people with all the downsizing that's been happening. And they could just be such a zombie that they don't even have the bandwidth to brush their teeth when they get home. And you just don't know. But yeah,
Right.
I'm very much like both of you. Like, we've all been in the situations where we've been like looking for work, and I have Excel sheets with like lists of recruiters. Like, I'm happy to, I share all of my information, welcome people to look at my LinkedIn. If there's anybody I'm connected to that I, genuinely have a relationship with, happy to make the introduction. And some people just, it's not their thing.
A lot of our success is unfortunately riding probably on one person that just needs to take a look at a resume and think outside the box and maybe think, okay, this guy does have a skill set. He does have experience. And, I think sometimes people are scared about too much experience. We have a wealth of knowledge. I feel like I've been looking for full-time work for like 6-8 years. Luckily, I have been finding my way at emerging companies and doing some great things in new technology. I'm in that situation again, which is fine because I know, I'm confident in my skill set. And, but, it is a full-time job looking for jobs, right? We're all on LinkedIn. We're trying to create content. We're trying to be relevant. And it's tough, but you have to be positive. Otherwise, like you were saying, Susan, it's going to get you down and it's not good for your mental health.
I pretty much acknowledge that I'm probably not going to get a full-time position somewhere. I still would like one. I still feel like I have something to offer. I still feel like I have the fire inside of me to do a great job and to be a great hire at a company. What I have been doing is similar to you, Andrew. Instead of consulting, I've been freelance talent booking, which, does a couple of things. One, it pays the bills, but number two, it also allows me to keep in touch with publicists, managers, and production and producers so that I'm on their radars when, whether I'm working or not working, so that, I'm just trying to keep my name out there as much as possible so that, if somebody does hear of something close to what I do, then, hopefully they will think of me. In the past couple of years, I've worked for a production company called F Street Productions. They were doing a podcast when I started working for them, and I was booking the guests for that podcast. And then they moved on to a YouTube music reaction show, and I was booking all the music guests for that show, which was kind of fun because it was like we're booking artists from the 60s through the early 2000s. And it was interesting to book the Cowsills and then Todd Higginson from Plain White Tees. Like, you would never think that either of them would be in the same show at all. But it was fun. I mean, we had Jane Weedland, we had Lisa Loeb, Taylor Dane, Melissa Etheridge. It was just sort of a hodgepodge of names, but it was really, really fun to do because it reconnected me back with a lot of these industry people that I hadn't talked to in a while, but it also reconnected me back with the music. trying to sort of pitch myself as somebody who has a really good handle on catalog and legacy.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I feel like whatever skill set I have could really be utilized by somebody. And honestly, that's also probably where most of the music business is still, there's some growth potential there, is to mine all of that catalog stuff. Everyone's going to listen to or has listened to the Taylor Swift album that came out today, but most people's playlists are probably made up of legacy music. Yes, there are people who are listening to New Music Friday or whatever the other services call them. But honestly, when I put on like a playlist to go to the gym or walk around or whatever, it's probably going to be stuff maybe from 5 years ago or maybe from 20 years ago. You know, it is, and that's where my music tastes lie. And I think that that's also where your opportunities lie as a streaming service or a label or a YouTube or anything along those lines.
Yeah, we talk about music nostalgia a lot, and that music is still relevant today. You know, I have a part-time gig where I program music for hotel and casinos, primarily in Vegas and around the country. And a lot of that music, again, is, you know, because the clientele at some of these resorts and destinations might be a little older, I'm playing a lot of classic rock from the late 60s through now. But us as curators can, you know, turn those lists. We know the audience and we know how to curate. I've been putting together these newsletters under a nostalgia theme in my LinkedIn. And I feel like that's a way for me to keep reiterating my skill set whenever I hear something about brand advocacy that, you know, fashion and food brands are focusing on. I put out a newsletter today where, you know, music's been doing that for decades with fan clubs and street teams. And, you know, what I've been involved in the last 5 years, where I've been using new technology to build super fan clubs and, you know, thinking about exclusive content and what perks, you know, can you give this group that is investing their money and time into this particular brand, whether it's a retail brand or a music artist. They're still brands, right? So that's how I've been recently, still trying to get my skill set out there. LinkedIn's been great. I've had a ton of interviews from that platform. I've landed a lot of consulting jobs of, you know, people I've met on LinkedIn. But, you know, coming back to, it's just frustrating where, you know, you've worked with people for 20 years, they're in great positions, and there's nothing that they can do to give you an opportunity.
Susan, if you could create your next perfect job, what would it be?
That's a great question. And I want to add on to what you just said, Andrew, about throw you a bone. Look, you guys, we're getting older. So some of our mentors have retired. I'm sure, you know, like Tim Rasta is enjoying a well-deserved retirement. I'm sure if he was at another network or somewhere where he could bring me on board, he would. The woman that hired me, the publisher from Us Weekly, like, she's decided that she's retiring after she was let go while I was still there. You know, she knows my work and she knows what I can do and how much money I can generate for the company. I'm sure if she was, you know, another publishing company, she would bring me on. So that's something I feel like we have to keep in mind. Like, a lot of our connections aren't even working. A lot of people we know that aren't working, or they've moved out of the business. So, you know, transitioning on to what you asked, Perry, like, I love integrative marketing, and I am one of the best integrative marketers out there for media. I am going to be super picky with my next job because I am not going to be miserable living paycheck to paycheck at a company whose mission I don't believe in, just so I can pay rent in New York. Now, what has hurt us, especially ad salespeople, is that the streaming services don't have the traditional ad sales model. They're starting to have sale, but it's subscription based, and they're focused on subscription. Yes, Netflix has ad sales now. Like, yes, you're going to see ads running on Apple TV, of course. And they're just starting to get into the branded content game. I always felt that the owners of the IPs should oversee all of product integration. There's really companies out there that do the product integration before it sells to the company. I'm like thinking the company's losing all this types of money. Like, why wouldn't they just want it to go through them? And they're starting to do it, but it's starting slow. And the jobs where there might have been like 10 people on a team, there's 2. So, and that goes, it's not just for ad sales and integrated marketing. I think that's true for everything. I think that's true for like on-air promos. I think that's true for development. They're not, look what's happening with Skydance and Paramount. And now Skydance is saying they want to buy Warner Brothers Discovery. Now is it going to just be like one corporation that's owning all of like these cable networks that employed thousands of people at one point? So yeah, I would love to go back and be the head of integrative marketing, and I would love to keep working in pop culture. And Us Weekly, E was a great fit. Paramount was a great fit. I mean, and if I could go back into that type of job, I would. I'm also a certified Pilates instructor. So I have always wanted, it's always something that I wanted to do. I wanted to do it when I got laid off of Paramount, when the CBS Viacom merger happened and they restructured, but it was during the pandemic. So there was nothing was happening. And then when I got laid off from Us Weekly, I was like, I'm doing it. I'm getting my certification. I'm now teaching Pilates 5 days a week in around studios in New York. Is it the same type of money? No.
But you're happy.
I'm happy. It's different. It's way different than sitting at the computer and working 12 hours a day. It's way different than working on a tent pole. Like, you're working with people, different personalities, you're cueing them on how to move, like you're on your feet. The money is when you get the private clients, which takes a long time to establish. But you know what? I'm investing in my health, and like, since like health insurance is like, I'm on freelancers. I pay for free. I'm a freelancer. I have an EIN number, so I have freelancers insurance. Like, it's not great, but it covers me in an emergency. So I better be able to get out of bed. I better be able to walk up and down those subway stairs when I am 60, when I'm 65, 70, 75, because I cannot afford good health care. But that was my transition. That was my backup. Pilates is starting to become more popular and mainstream, and that's helpful. But I have 15 years, well, starting tomorrow, 14 years until I can retire at 65. So I can't just sit back and do nothing.
A long time. Yeah.
And I was just going to quickly note, for us, with our 401ks, like, our generation was really affected by the recession in 2008, where our 401ks should, be much higher than they are because of that. So it's tough, like, but we gotta hustle, and hustling is exhausting.
Yeah. I actually took a few years, and I was a CrossFit instructor as well. I took 5 different certifications. I was certified in endurance and kids. I ended up opening a studio attached to my CrossFit gym where I would run endurance and kids classes. But after a few years, there's so much competition around my town with other gyms, and to go, and I would have private clients, which was incredible. And then 2 would leave, and then it's like you're back to square one. Yeah. And it takes a lot to run regular group classes and commit and almost break even. So I got to a point where, I never 100% gave up from the music industry or the entertainment industry. And, I don't really have a backup plan. That's just kind of what my focus is to utilize my kind of strengths and kind of passion in content, storytelling and planning into whether it's podcasting, digital, and whether it's music, fashion, food. I feel like my skill set can be utilized across a lot of different verticals. So
I've had backup plans for a long time. Pilates instructor was one of them. It's really, it's so expensive to become certified, and the equipment is super expensive. Another backup plan of mine was to go back to school for mortuary science and be a funeral director,
Oh,
because
Oh,
people are always dying.
that is
You
true.
can't
that's
stop that.
something that, yeah.
One thing I did want to kind of bring up, though, I was thinking about this earlier today, was, you know, everyone's saying the broadcast model is dying, the cable model is dying, or is dead, actually. But I do think that if anybody brings something like that back, it's going to be Netflix. It just feels to me like they're not going to program like a cable network or a TV network does currently, but it feels to me like they are the closest thing to a TV network that currently exists, especially with having this ad-supported tier and the fact that there is an integrated marketing team that is there
And a
currently.
live component now.
And a live component,
Yeah.
absolutely. And it feels to me like it will look different and run different, but it's going to be sort of based on the same model, I think.
I heard rumors a year ago that they wanted to start a music streaming service as well.
Makes
So,
sense.
yeah,
That would
It
be
makes
nice.
sense to them.
yeah.
Yeah.
They're Ted Sarandos came to speak at the Paley Center for Media. He was one of their Paley dialogues for people who are media council members. And he was, speaking about what their model is and his background and what they wanted moving forward. Television is still like the number one medium where people expect to see ads. People don't want to see ads. They don't want it on social media. They don't want it on like their TikTok. Like they don't want it, like they are comfortable with it on TV. They're more accepting of it on TV, but they don't really want to see it anywhere else. So I don't think
Right.
it's going away, but it's definitely changing. But these streaming services are the ones that are sucking up all the budgets from all the broadcasts and the cable, because they're going after all of the live sports.
Mm-hmm.
And broadcast is trying to compete with like their budgets. And now Netflix is not making money. Let's also be honest here. Like they're in the red. Like they're still like they're growing, but they're not making money. Oh, they're a growing company. It's not like Viacom was. Like they were putting all this money
Well,
in
their
their shareholder
money's
pocket.
more on the subscription model than ads.
Yes, but I don't think they don't make the money that they put into buying up like live sports or putting money into the production and that sort of thing. But like yes, they have the subscribers, but they're also the reason why, like, I mean, it's the middle of football season, right? Football, we're in week 5, I think. Last night I think it was on ESPN. I don't know if it's going to be on Fox this weekend, if it's going to be on Netflix, if it's going to be on Amazon, is it going to be on NBC, is it going to be
Apple TV does the MLS, and I follow the Premier League, and and a lot of my soccer's split between CBS, Paramount Plus, and Peacock.
I think
Yeah.
there was even 2 games on last night, which was a rarity for Thursday night football. It is just the Sunday afternoon football is no longer just Sunday afternoon football. It is almost every night of the week, plus international, because isn't there a game in London this weekend, and they played in Brazil earlier?
Yep.
So, I mean, it is, at some point, the broadcast networks aren't going to be able to compete to get the NFL or, the NBA or whoever
They
it
only
is,
have
or the
24 hours in a day.
Yeah, or the Olympics. They're going to be outpriced by one of these streaming services.
And if they do, then maybe they'll start developing original content again. I mean, that's the thing. Like, that's what we learned during the pandemic was what people were watching for live programming were sports and news. Last year, a lot of like the broadcast networks did well because of the election.
Well, they did well selling advertising too because of the election. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So.
But yeah, I mean, I don't, but as a consumer, at what point, like, are you going to, like, I don't want to buy, like, have all these subscriptions just so I could watch my team play a full season of football.
Right.
Expensive.
Yeah.
It's starting to become as expensive as cable.
Yes. Yeah, you're right. If you were to have every subscription service and you were to have the premium tier of that, you would be paying comparatively what you would be paying for
That's
cable. And you still don't have the cable channels. I mean, yes, you do to an extent because Peacock has all of NBC Universal's cable channels, but those cable channels are not going to be part of NBC Universal for much longer because they're being spun off into their own company. So this is a great conversation starter for another podcast, I think. So,
And if there's anybody at Versant, which the new cable company is listening to this, and you need somebody that does integrated marketing and programming and talent booking,
we're here.
we're here.
Yeah. And reach out. Follow us on LinkedIn. Reach out for a conversation. You never know where things can go.
Yes, we're
But
always
we would
open to
appreciate
talking
it.
to somebody. Yep,
Yeah,
absolutely. So thank you for listening. We appreciate it. Again, don't forget to like, share, review, and rate. And of course, we want to say thank you to Susan for joining us today.
Thank you, Susan.
thank you guys. This is such a wonderful pre-birthday gift.
So again, let's everyone post on social media wherever you're seeing our social media promos. Say happy birthday to Susan.
All right, guys.
All right. Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.
See ya.
Bye.